everybody. Everyone came back with all their digits from the 4th of July holiday, I see. That's good. Success. We made it through the second quarter of 2025. And, last time we sat and talked, there was a lot going on politically, nationally, even locally. Obviously, it's been very quiet. Nothing's happened since.
Not much, right?
But first, a little housekeeping. One, we're in our marketing department right now, which many people don't get to see. We got some new printers and other things that I'm excited to see what we can produce for our clients, so that's great. But also, we are the sponsor for the Family Stone concert coming up here July 25th.
Yes.
We're going to be having a bit of a beer garden over at Knuckles beforehand, so we hope to see you there.
Should be fun.
Should be. We don't get rained out again. Actually, never complain about rain. Never complain about rain. Okay, we'll get over that.
The soft drizzles.
Yes. Well, let's get back on topic. So last time we were here, we were talking about there was tariffs. There was issues with the building side of things, some uncertainty there. Interest rates were high, and just sort of general shuffling of sort of society as a whole, it felt like. So where are we at today?
I'm going to say I don't think much has changed, but we're starting to feel more and more impact of the market dynamics, I think, in other parts of the country.
Yes.
Because Santa Fe is actually performing very well, I think, compared to many, particularly urban markets, where they have seen inventories skyrocket. Mm-hmm. Sales are very sluggish in a lot of these markets, and I think our sales have been relatively steady. In fact, our sales compared to last year have gone up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to that point, yeah.
Yeah, our sales have gone up. Our inventory has increased.
Yes.
Which is certainly affecting sales to a certain extent. But you talk about other parts of the country. We in Santa Fe, we typically don't see the roller coaster ride that the coasts do, that the big cities do.
Right.
We lag behind, but our sine curve is a little more level than theirs is.
Yeah, and what's also interesting is we talked last time a little bit about seasonality. That doesn't seem to have as much of an impact on our market anymore, which is interesting, right? So the buying patterns have changed there. But overall, appreciation is negligible. It's
Yes.
Some parts of town it's like minus 1%, other parts of town it's positive 1%. I mean, it's a non-issue. So
it is, but I think what we're seeing is a slow decline there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, actually, if you go back over 10 years, I think you've seen an appreciation level of about 100%. And then 2 to 3 years ago, maybe it was in the 3% range. And I think now it's about flattened out. The question is it going to continue to remain flat or steady, or is it actually going to decline?
And to speak to that, we are seeing a lot of price reductions.
Mm-hmm.
Gabs, I know you keep tabs on that.
Yeah, when I was looking earlier this morning, I like to look at our local MLS and get a kind of a pulse of what's going on. And just in the past 24 hours, there have been 21 price reductions, and in the past week, 81.
I'll bet that exceeds the number of new listings on the market.
It sure does.
That's
Good
an
guess.
interesting
Yeah.
factoid there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How are we doing on terminations?
That one is an interesting metric to look at. So I compared last year at this time with where we're at this year, and we've increased in terminations almost 20%.
Oof,
We're seeing a lot of terminations recently.
That's significant. I think
It
that
really
comes
is.
as a result of buyers just expecting more concessions from the seller
Mhm.
as a result of the inspections.
Yeah.
Well, and you look at the inventory changes, right? We have the most inventory we've had since 2019. And so buyers have a lot of options these days. So they don't have to settle anymore. They're being much more diligent in their process.
I remember back in the day, you'd get a roof inspection and you'd say, oh gosh, we need a new roof. Let's get a cost estimate on that. And it was $15,000, $20,000. But I think those roof costs now I think we're seeing a lot of them come in around $80,000 to $100,000 for a new roof.
Yes. Yeah, it can be spent, flat roofs, whatever your opinions may be, keeping the roofers busy. But you look at that, and then you look at these other auxiliary things, like a lot of HVAC items that were installed in the last 10 years. Like we're starting to see those needing replacement, right? Because like a lot of people didn't have air conditioning in Santa Fe 15, 20 years ago. They do now, and they're getting into that life cycle. And so we're seeing a lot of interesting concessions right now that we haven't really typically seen.
Yeah.
And the HVAC prices, of course, are going up.
Hadn't noticed. Yeah. And to that point, it's like the challenges that we were talking about last time, tariffs and everything else going on, they were put on pause. Stock market kind of recovered, all this sort of, background noise. But they're front and center again today. And so we're back to almost where we started. 90 days later, we're back to square one. And there's just that sort of uncertainty underneath. And so while we're still seeing things sell, you are seeing people be a lot more diligent. And I think that's important for sellers to understand.
We go back to something we've harped on before, the value and the import of getting a pre-inspection on a property.
Absolutely.
Both as a seller, and it is very helpful to a buyer. And then I think that is going to help with the number of terminations that we see.
I couldn't agree more. I think part of the challenges that buyers run into is there's too many surprises during their inspection periods. And so it's a lot easier for them now to back out of a contract if there's a major issue like a roof or HVAC, and go find something else. Whereas in the past, there weren't enough options for them to be able to back out of that contract.
Right.
They needed to get into a property.
So is this a case where it's now finally time for the buyers to have a little more leverage at the negotiating table? Because after all, it's the sellers who've been in the driving seat the last 10 years.
I think that's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
I think we're seeing that buyers have a lot more leverage. It helps to get a pre-listing inspection, but I think they still, will get in there and negotiate.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and if you just come back to the point of buying power, right? Because interest rates still are higher than they have been, right? The cost of repairs, everything else going into this, it hasn't gotten cheaper to buy a home.
Right.
Right. And so in some ways, I think the reason why we're seeing this price stagflation sort of occurring right now is because of that. Like there is no more money to be had out of it for folks. If you're a buyer, you're having to be careful. And so that's being reflected now in these negotiations. So speaking of like different market segments in Santa Fe, it feels like the higher end has been moving at a faster pace than, let's say, the more affordable housing in other parts of town. Is that a safe assumption?
That the facts will bear that out. I think if you look at total residential sales, Santa Fe County, for the first 6 months of this year, they're up 7% from last year. But when you look at over 1 million, those sales have increased 20%. That's almost 3 times the rate. That's a big difference.
Yeah. The flip side of that is South Side, West Side has all slowed down significantly. I have heard from several brokers listing homes in the $400,000 to $600,000 range, not getting showings. And I mean, not just no contracts, no interest, but no showings.
That's unusual.
That's very unusual. And I think that speaks to the fact that there's a lot of inventory in that price range, and that pricing strategy has to be right on.
And then I guess the continued impact of these higher interest rates.
Yeah.
We're hovering around 6.5%, 6.75%.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're seeing the cash purchase side still move at a fairly rapid pace comparatively to someone who's taken out a mortgage, right?
Yeah, and the middle income buyer can't necessarily qualify for a mortgage with those interest rates.
Right.
I think we're also seeing more terminations in that price range because buyers have less capacity to pay for a significant improvement to a house, like the roof.
Right.
Yep.
Gabs, did you see any numbers that kind of spelled this out? Like, are the days on market in those areas different at all?
Honestly, I haven't looked at the days on market.
I think Kyle looked at it.
Well, I was just curious. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, so when I looked at Rancho Viejo and Airport, those sort of areas, there was a pretty significant decline in how quickly homes were selling. I mean, we're seeing days on market increases, right?
Yes.
It's like almost doubling in some cases. While let's say the east side or historic east side, whatever you want to call that, and the southeast side, those have seen a decline. So the summer months came around and it's like it kind of flipped everything on its head, which is unusual. And so that's really only played out in the last 3 months. So since last time we sat down and had this conversation, it's like, wow, those two markets flipped. And so, expectations the rest of the summer, what do we think is going to happen? A continuation of that theme?
That's what I see. And I think there's going to be more focus and more energy on transactions over the $1 million range. Those are the kind of buyers we're having coming into the market. I think we have fewer buyers, unfortunately, who are buying in that $400,000 to $700,000 range.
And I wonder if a lot of those buyers bought and have the 2.5% interest rates,
Right.
and don't want to let go of that. They're going to ride it out.
I had an inquiry yesterday, the first one I've had, I think, in 5 years, about a short sale that a broker is undertaking in the Santa Fe marketplace right now. Haven't seen that in a long time.
They say 70% of U.S. homeowners with a mortgage are under 5%.
That's not surprising.
That is a very large immovable object right now,
Yeah.
right? If you got that really probably once in a lifetime interest rate, it's tough to let go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Don't blame them. I did, and I don't regret it, but still, it's one of those things that people are having to make these decisions right now. I think economically, there's a lot of other things at play right now that are factoring into the housing market that typically aren't there in the back of people's minds. And so,
Yes. And these conditions are impacting new builds.
yes,
I mean, you can look at the national builders, and we have several of those here in Santa Fe. Their prices are going up because of the increase in cost of goods and labor. Their transactions are diminishing. They're trying hard to, come up with nice ways to make it more affordable, like lower interest rates, et cetera.
Right.
But talking to some builders in the higher end range, they're having a heck of a time trying to price out and tell a buyer what to expect something is going to cost.
And they're also having to pay even higher interest rates for construction loans.
right.
Yeah,
So-
and actually in our last video, that I believe that was something that we talked about, was new construction and the rise that we've seen. I was seeing a ton of new construction contracts that were closing, and now I'm seeing fewer and fewer come into the office. So yeah, that's just, I'd agree exactly.
Yeah. They're
With what you're saying,
they're
David.
competing with the used house, the resale house inventory,
Right.
which is increasing.
So we're seeing potentially, home building slowing down a little bit. We're seeing more inventory enter the market. I think we're potentially looking at interest rates maybe coming down a little bit in
Maybe
the
a
near
little.
future, right? It seems like the higher end is still moving. Cash is king. So this is an interesting market, right? This is a little bit unusual. We're back to 2019 sort of numbers and balance, but obviously at a much higher price point. And so if you're a buyer right now, what's your recommendation?
Well, what I do see is buyers taking their time. They're not acting with urgency, and that's a big change compared to market conditions of the past number of years. And they're much more willing to walk away from a contract
Yeah.
and keep searching.
Right?
And negotiate. There's a lot more negotiations happening. Before it was just, they would settle, they take it. I'm seeing so much negotiations after inspections. So they do have a little bit of a wiggle room there that they didn't have prior.
And it's great for buyers. We've got a buyer's market right now, pretty much.
Yeah,
right?
it's very close to. Yeah.
And it's a great time for buyers. But yeah, I will just echo what David and Gab said is be careful. Look, you've got the time, you've got the inventory to look at.
And the leverage.
And
a little bit of
Right,
leverage.
a little bit of leverage, yeah.
Absolutely the leverage.
And always be thorough with those inspections.
Yes.
Sewer lines, get them scoped.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, this Santa Fe has a lot of houses with old sewer lines.
Yes.
Scope the new ones too.
Yes.
So I want to, with the buyers versus sellers market. So because inventory's gone up, but sales have remained constant, pretty steady across the board, but prices have flatlined. It's actually almost a perfectly balanced market right now, which is interesting. I don't think sellers or buyers really have leverage on each other. It's going to be very home specific, right? But because of that, there's a lot more potential friction, right? Because the seller may think they have more leverage, the buyer may think they have more leverage, right? Neither really does. And so I think it's a really good time for folks to understand that if I'm a seller, like listen and try to cooperate. Try to get through the contract, work together on getting those, credits are always helpful, right? Get those inspections done, get quotes, be informed, and try to get to the closing table. It behooves folks to do so. The big question, if you're talking to a seller, is the market going to improve moving forward, or is it going to get worse? And I think that's a huge question mark.
It is.
My crystal ball is not clear.
I mean, based on what I'm seeing, right, there's still a ton of activity in this market, a ton, and more than we've seen since last year. So there's opportunity out there, but buyers are well educated. They're doing their due diligence. And I think that there's still a bit of a misalignment between buyers and sellers. Sellers are still trying to push it a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's where the friction is coming from. That's where that 20% increase in terminations is coming from. So as a seller, you got to go into it with the eyes of a buyer. Walk through your property, take a look at it. Is there anything that you would see as adverse from a buyer perspective?
And do your due diligence. Like, take some time to go to the open houses of similar properties to the one you're going to sell.
Yeah.
Educate yourself, right? Understand what other folks are looking at.
And again, do your pre-listing inspection and consider making repairs
Yep.
prior to putting it on the market.
Yep.
Yeah,
knowing it has a new roof or new
Yeah.
septic or whatever issues are going on, knowing that that's been handled ahead of time and having the receipts, that's only going to provide more confidence in that contract moving forward.
Yeah. And then price it right.
Well, pricing. This is not a good time to test the market. If I hear testing the market one more time, I'm going to lose it. This is not the time for that. This is a time to do your due diligence, take your time, trust the data, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna get punished.
Price it right, make your repairs, and present it as well as you can.
Absolutely. Yeah, do that little extra landscaping.
Do it.
Paint that wall.
My biggest fear right now is if the market remains flat, maybe even declines a little bit by a percentage point or two. As a seller, do you get ahead of that curve? And if the market is going to decline, are you then in a position where you're going to be chasing the market down? That is a very tough road.
Yeah. Emotionally, it's a tough road, just as well as on the wallet. So, it's one to get ahead of for sure. Okay, so it's July, wrapping this up. Summer's here, so see you at the concert, hopefully. What do we expect now moving into the busiest time of year? I mean, obviously, people are here for the various festivals, fiestas, all that sort of stuff, right? Are we going to see more inventory?
I think we're going to see more inventory. I think we're going to see more contracts. I think we're going to see more price sensitivity. Don't know what the interest rates are going to do. That's
a big mystery.
That will have an impact on it.
Yep.
And I think that along with that, we see some of the negatives like terminations. I think we'll see more negotiations as a result of inspections. Not that that's necessarily a negative, but I think everything on steroids.
Yeah. Actually, I think that's a pretty good summation. I agree with you on all fronts there. Yeah.
And I do want to point out, because I agree with everything that Laura just said, and there is a massive question mark with what's going to happen as a result of tariffs.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that we have no idea how that's going to impact this market in terms of building, cost of materials for repairs, appliances. So that is something to pay attention to for sure.
You've always had to kind of pay the Santa Fe premium anyways because of our location and sort of lack of workforce to do these things. And so it is going to be interesting to see how that plays out long term. Okay, so I guess the end of it here is good news, not so bad news. We just
stay tuned.
Stay tuned. It is what it is. Homes are selling. It's a good time to figure it out, right? But take your time, do your due diligence, talk to a good broker, right? And if you're going to list it, market it well.
Yep.
And you need to be a serious seller. You need to be motivated to sell in this market.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, guys.
Thank
See
you.
you in
At the
3
concert.
months. Yeah. Or at the concert.
Yes, right.